Support for Lab Out Loud is provided by NSTA, the National Science Teaching Association. Find out more about what NSTA has to offer at nsta.org. You're listening to Lab Out Loud, Science for the Classroom and beyond. And our guest today is here to talk about NSTA's new Professional Learning Units, or PLUs.
So when somebody engages in one of the PLUs, they have the opportunity to watch the whole recording and also the use of digital collaborative spaces. So you're engaging in it, maybe in your jammies by yourself at your house, but you're in a collaborative space with teachers all over the country posting thinking, and they're really quite beautiful in the way that they're designed, that balance of being able to really deeply think yourself and connect to your classroom, but also connect with other people at the same time.
That's up next on Lab Out Loud, but first, I'm Dale Basler.
And I'm Brian Bartell.
And as you heard in the intro, we're talking about PLUs, Professional Learning Units, with our guest, Tricia Shelton.
Yes, I'm so excited to be here. My name is Trish Shelton. I am the Chief Learning Officer at the National Science Teaching Association, and I am a retired middle school and high school teacher from the state of Kentucky.
Oh, when did you last teach?
I retired in 2017 in May at the end of the year, and I started working at NSTA that June.
Education officer, is that what you said?
Chief Learning Officer.
Chief Learning Officer. What does that entail? What does your job look like?
It is a dream job that I obviously have been focused on learning myself and supporting the learning of others for decades. And now I still get to be embedded in schools and districts when it's not COVID, and work with kids, but I get to work with teachers every day in their own personal professional learning journey. And at the organization, I also get to learn myself from all of those teachers and from my colleagues, and support the learning of the adults in the organization as well. So Chief Learning Officer is just obsessed with learning in every way.
It's almost like you're an instructional coach in a sense. It sounds like a science coach.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, there is a deal of coaching, and there's opportunities for me to meet and interact and learn from all kinds of partners and different groups and groups to really that might be considered by some outside the field of education, all pulling together to see how we can better support teachers and students. And it's just been wonderful for me. I love the classroom. I miss it dearly, but I'm also really excited to be involved at this more national level, and all of the things that I'm learning that affect the education, not just the classroom, but the system and the research and the policy around it. So it definitely has been a rebirth, a second career for me.
Sure.
Oh, wonderful.
Is there something that really surprised you so far in this role?
I think one of the things that two things come to mind right away. One of them has been an affirmation, and in particular, in this past year, emotionally, that brings me to tears. Like that, I've always recognized the passion, the commitment, the sacrifice of educators as professionals, but what I've seen happen over the past year, and all of those things on steroids, that I just have such deep appreciation for teachers like both of you and the profession, and how people have pulled together over the past year and 2 years, that has just really been remarkable, and such deep appreciation for that. And I would say the other thing that in particular the pandemic did was a lot of groups that might not have considered themselves being able to impact K-12 education, or that wasn't the space they thought about. They saw what was happening societally and with the pandemic, and they felt the need to somehow connect themselves to K-12 education. And so there's been so many opportunities, I think, of new funding, new projects, new spaces that can support that. There's a call to action report, for example, that came out. And so it is a chance for science education, I think, to really be re-energized and launch into that next era, which I think is really exciting.
Sure. Do you have an example of some of those new groups or the new areas that kind of, I guess, stepped up to the plate?
In particularly, some for-profit companies that are really interested in supporting education for all, and what are the teaching and learning strategies that are really going to make a difference, especially for populations of kids that have been traditionally underserved or under-resourced. And so looking to how they can have a positive impact on education has been an example. And then in the field of data science and computer science, a lot of organizations that want to partner with us in science ed, like obviously funding has gone into computer science or data science, but thinking about for the typical biology class or for the typical chemistry class that is teaching the required content for that state, how can we intersect those fields into that learning to really position kids as problem solvers and agents of change, and being able to analyze that data to make decisions and conclusions. I think that is really, really exciting, because it's giving teachers the support in these new areas. If they've been in the classroom for decades, they might not have ever had the training in computer science or data science. And so giving them the support and the confidence they need to offer those opportunities for kids, which are really preparing them for this 21st century world and the opportunities that can entail. So that's really exciting to me. And to be quite honest, an area that I didn't have much experience in, I actually coded my Alexa to do a bunch of stuff a couple months ago, and I felt really, really great about it. Like, wow, look what I accomplished.
No, Alexa, you work for me.
That's right. And I'm right now, thank goodness she's off, because I learned quickly I should call her the assistant.
Oh, yeah.
Especially, she'll start talking to us right here in the podcast. But yeah.
So Trish, we talked to the NSTA director, the new one, Erica Shugart, earlier in the year, and by earlier in the year, it's February now, so I don't mean in January. I mean the school year, by which most people that listen to our show probably measure their years as well. But we talked to her about some of the changes that we're seeing in NSTA, and we've seen a shift towards more digital offerings, especially, and that may have been basically the pandemic may have been a catalyst for that change in NSTA. Is that what we've seen happen now? We've been a few months into that. What have we seen happening now, coming to fruition?
Yes, and I'm glad that you guys were able to have a conversation with her. I very much appreciate her vision. And the way that I would describe it is digital first and also learning first. That was we had a chief content officer position prior to me coming into this position, and I specifically asked for the name to be changed to chief learning officer. So I think that the combination of the digital piece and the learning in the forefront, as opposed to individual pieces of content, has been really great for NSTA, because it's really it's positioned the needs of teachers, especially during this incredibly challenging time like COVID, and the needs they have for their own learning in a time that is very challenging. So something that I like to bring to that is bite-sized. Like, teachers are committed and passionate and care so deeply about kids. They want to find the time to improve their craft, to deepen their knowledge and pedagogy base, but they're so strapped for time. So bite-sized, digital allows us to do that. And then the learning first piece is thinking about all of the different ways we can go about supporting teachers where they truly are right now in the world and all the challenges of the world, but also when thinking about their path over the course of their career. Teachers' needs change, and their time commitments for family and all of the outside things change. And so that learning first initiative is really like picture a buffet. Like you go to one of those restaurants that has all of the choices. And for right now, you walk up and you choose the things that fit your needs or your taste or what you can handle in that exact moment. And I think that this digital first, learning first initiative that was birthed with the pandemic and us just wanting to be whatever teachers needed at that moment, that was so challenging and continues to remain, has really allowed us to evolve into, in some ways, a different kind of organization. And that's really exciting. I've been a member of NSTA since really early in my teaching career and have valued the organization so much. And it's exciting for me, even though I'm relatively new to the organization, to see these changes and I guess see teachers at the table in a completely different way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been, if I go to the website right now, there's like a little ad for like coffee break learning kind of a thing there.
Yeah.
And I think about the traditional conference experience, and that, it probably was akin to drinking from a fire hose, and not even that, like 18 fire hoses, because you couldn't even get to all the sessions.
It's exhausting.
And so these might be like more sips of learning when you need it.
Absolutely. And they play really well together, almost like nesting dolls. Like if you look at, I love that analogy, the conference is the waterfall, it's kind of the way like you go and you try on all kinds of different things when you're at the conference, but you might settle like as you leave the conference that you really want to dig deeper into this particular piece, that the bite-sized learning is a way to do that, but in a way that a lot of what we're building is asynchronous. So some educators will go through the experience in a week and others will take a year, but it's at their own pace, at their own time. And what we were hearing from teachers was that if you think about it's been about 10 years since the national standards came out and the framework that it was the vision for that. And so many states have adopted their own standards based on that vision, that there was a lot of time spent around the policy and adopting and then understanding that. And now it's really about trying to make that vision come alive in each individual teacher's classroom. And so they report that they have really specific zoomed in needs for that. So at a conference, you might be able to like pick some sessions for that, but then we also want to have some opportunities digitally for teachers where they can choose what they want to dive deeper into and really focus in on that part of the implementation of the vision, if that makes sense. So just-in-time learning that is really based on where teachers are in their journey of something that was a pretty complex shift for the country with the new standards.
I think it's really important if you haven't gone to a national conference to actually experience that too, because yes, drinking from the fire hose is important to kind of see what is all out there, and it is a wonderful experience to see just the breadth and the depth of everything that's being offered. But you're right, being able to drill in, and I remember our last conference when Dale and I came back, he was listening to a session on the plane as one of them that we couldn't attend because we were going to something else. And you can carry those experiences forward. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, absolutely. And one of the things that we just launched, something called a professional learning unit. We abbreviated them PLUs. They're asynchronous mini courses that came directly out of teacher surveys, focus groups, where teachers can drill in, and specifically around strategies that support this new vision, and in particular around areas that they've expressed have been the biggest shifts in the classroom, like supporting students in surfacing their ideas and sharing them publicly, in terms of engagement in the practices, but in particularly certain practices that teachers are reporting that they need more support with. And so even like going into the Houston and Chicago conference, we're thinking a lot about how can we build off those sessions and that sense of community and then pull that through in what could be a a personalized learning journey for a teacher throughout then that next school year, like starting in the summer after those 2 national conferences. And so these mini courses, teachers right away asked if there was a way that they could almost like a subscription service like Netflix, where, you join and you can watch any movie you want over the course of that year. And so that we launched just in January a subscription type service, call it a professional learning add-on, where they get access to all of these mini courses, plus a live web seminar series, plus the interactive ebooks for professional learning. And so it's all of the different pieces of digital professional learning that you could use outside of the conference time throughout the school year at your leisure, at your own pace, and you choose the things that you want to learn about. So we're trying to provide that approach that is grounded in the best teaching and learning strategies recommended by research, but is delivered and convened in a way that really fits what teachers are articulating or their needs and how they want to access that content, if that makes sense.
Okay. So you started a few of these. What are some of the topics that are out there?
We have a couple that are in the bucket of STEM and engineering. We have some that are in the science and engineering practices. We have one that was designed and delivered by Dr. Brian Brown, called The Meaning Behind the Words.
Yeah.
And that has been quite popular. And they just launched in November, and already thousands of teachers have added them to their My Library of NSTA. You guys are familiar with that, a place where you can put your own content. And the other really cool thing about these is that teachers can, they get a certificate of completion at the end. Somebody from NSTA actually looks at the answers that they submit that are connected directly to their classroom, to their practice. Several of them encourage teachers to go in and try something and then to share that back out. And they get a certificate at the end that they can turn in, depending on their state, for professional learning clock hours or continuing education credit. So it really fills a lot of needs that teachers have in their normal career path and in their normal year, but in a way of those topics, as we said before. So we're hopeful by the end of the calendar year, halfway through next school year, that we'll
halfway through the school year. That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
That 75 to 100 of them, and within about a year and a half to 2 years, 250 to choose from. So they're an aggressive growth thing, but right now we have 10.
Yeah, well, that's a good start.
But they are quite popular.
Have you taught any of these, or have you delivered any of these?
Yes, a lot of them are grounded in, as you all know, that we have live web seminars monthly. We have different series. Teacher Tip Tuesday, for example, are tips that teachers can put into practice in the classroom immediately that next day. Then there's Transforming Science Learning, which is more pedagogy focused, that the topics are spread and build on each other throughout several months or even a whole year. So we're using the recordings from those along with NSTA resources and other convened resources to create the classes. So when somebody engages in one of the PLUs, they have the opportunity to watch the whole recording if it came from a web seminar. But within the mini course, it's focused in on certain segments of that particular recording, and also the use of digital collaborative spaces. So you're engaging in it, maybe in your jammies by yourself at your house, but you're in a collaborative space with teachers all over the country posting thinking. And so they're really quite beautiful in the way that they're designed, that balance of being able to really deeply think yourself and connect to your classroom, but also connect with other people at the same time.
That was my question that you answered before I even asked it. Was these sound like they're more than just Zoom recordings?
Yeah, each one has a before viewing, kind of grease the wheels to the thinking, asking you questions that get you in that right headspace or get you thinking about the students in your room. Or if you're lots of school or district leaders or coaches are also using them, and so getting them to think about the teachers that they serve. And then there's during the learning part, where the teachers are engaged in some kind of an immersion experience or a learning experience around that zoomed in topic. And then there's an after viewing section where they either reflect and put something into like what they want to do in their classroom, or we have several that are about the use of digital tools. Like, even though most of the country is back to face at this point, what teachers learned during that time can become quite useful in the face-to-face classroom as well. So those are still quite popular, and those encourage the use of some of the digital tips and tricks that are learned in the professional learning unit to go and try them in the classroom. And teachers also report that they found that so valuable that they turned around and like convened teachers in their building and said, hey, you got to come and look at this, and created their own mini PLC where they all tried out things together. And that was the most inspirational piece of what we heard from the focus group testers, that what they shared about the use of these. And that was something that they weren't necessarily intentionally designed for, but as soon as we found out that teachers were using them that way, we put some extra opportunities for that use in there, because that's a teacher learning and then getting to turn around and lead other adults in learning to sort of pass that magic on, which is the best part of teaching and leading, I think.
Sure. Is that how there are ways to update them too?
Yeah, there. We use I guess a learning management system that we built that is embedded into our website. So we have dedicated IT people that, as the teachers are using them, we're looking at the way they're set up is each of them has, let's say, between 6 and 10 fields where we're asking for teachers to share their thinking or to share their examples or to deeply think about what they're trying to learn and to make their thinking public to us. And so we're using the feedback that we get just from teachers engaging in them, but also watching the learning come through in what their answers are. And so we've gone back and made adjustments because we've said, oh, we're not getting the articulations that we were expecting. It could be in the way we asked the question, or it could be in the way that we position this. And so then we'll change that and then watch the answers come in afterwards. And we'll be like, oh, okay, now we have it. So it is quite lovely that they're very easily iterated based on what teachers are saying about them, but also what they're willing to share with us as they engage in them.
What other kind of feedback have you gotten from the teachers who have gone through this?
Well, one of the pieces of feedback, they just became available to the university professors who use NSTA as a textbook at the beginning of this semester. And so they're being used in lots of pre-service educators now, which I think is really wonderful. The teachers like the fact that they're short, that there's other courses that you can buy out there that they're more expensive and they're a much bigger time investment. So they like the fact you talked about them being zoomed in, but that also brings down the price point and the time commitment so they can space those out. They like the opportunity that they get to receive feedback. And what the NSTA people, or if it's a university class, then the university professor, his or herself, is the one giving the feedback. But if I answered number 4 and I shared my thinking, but whoever is reading the answer isn't quite sure or wants to dig a little deeper, then on that side of it, we can actually type in feedback that goes back to the person and then reopen that question and say, hey, can you tell me a little bit more about how this went in your classroom? Or can you give me some examples about what you're thinking? And so teachers like the fact to know that somebody's actually reading what they're sharing and that they have that opportunity to get feedback, which I think is something that is a little unique from most courses that are.
But also what we would recommend when we're engaging with our own students.
Yes.
Imagine that.
Yes, absolutely.
So we've had Dr. Brown on the show. He's very engaging, and I could see where that would be a very popular PLU. Do you have any others that you'd recommend, or do you have a couple coming up that you're like, oh, you can't miss this one?
Yeah, so the one that we made free to everybody, because it was really important to us. This is a new thing for us, and the name, like, even though it's fine, professional learning unit, that doesn't, you're like, what's that? What's a professional learning unit? And so we wanted people to be able to test drive one. So the one that is free to all is one of my favorite. It is called What is Sense Making? And speaking of modeling what we want to do for students in the classroom, it's creating the space for teachers to visit a third grade classroom from the Bronx via video, and asking the educator to make some notices about what they see the teacher doing and the student doing. And then from these series of individual reflections, but a lot of collaborative space work, to come up with a definition of sense making, which is the word that we describe for the vision that the new standards is based on, which is really quite complex. But instead of us saying, okay, this is what sense making is, that we're building it up collaboratively. And even prior to the PLU, we had done this exercise with over 2,000 teachers. And the cool thing is that what teachers and groups of teachers articulate has so much synergy. And so it's this collective building of, this is what it means to do that. Okay, so now where do I want to start? Like, I really want to dig into this aspect. So I love it as kind of the foundational one, the launch one, and then you can choose what you want to dig deeper into after that. Mm-hmm. So I'll call it, and everybody can do that for free. You don't have to be a member of NSTA. And then from that, for example, our next one that is launching next week is about the practice of developing and using models, which lots of people know lots of pieces about. But it is backing that up to some of the foundational pieces of that practice that, if you put that into practice in your classroom with kids, really increases their success of being able to engage in that practice well. And that has been a big ask of educators. And it's something that we've done live with some districts for a little while with a lot of success. So we decided to turn it into one of these mini courses so that everybody can have the chance to think about that. So that's one coming up next week.
So you really have like no commitment in here, because you have the free one. So listeners could go try out the free one, get in there. And then if you are I hope our listeners are NSTA members, but if they're not an NSTA member, they can do the free one for non-members. And if they're members, there's I'm seeing the Meaning Beyond the Words, that's free for free for members. So you can kind of sample, kind of like the zero entry pool. Like, you can put your toe in here and kind of like, it's not necessarily a huge dive in right away.
Absolutely. And as we've already said twice, so I'm sorry for the repetition, they just launched in November, and there's already close to 1,000 teachers who have either started or finished the Making Sense, and awesome. About 500 with the Meaning Beyond the Words, which is quite impressive considering Absolutely. Like all of the complexity and the holidays, COVID, Omicron, and that again shows you the passion and dedication of teachers. That
maybe it was a lot of isolation they had to be.
Yeah. A lot of them did come in over the break, like that. They come into us, and then we give the feedback and issue the certificates. So I'm really excited about the opportunity that they also entail for schools and districts themselves. Like, if they have a group space on our website, then they get all of the PLUs for free into we call it a district partner program. And the science department heads or the teacher leaders or a volunteer group of teachers or instructional coaches, they can elect to be the ones that are giving feedback. So it's a way for a district or a school to use our infrastructure and our content, but in a way that with their leadership and expertise on the ground that really meets the needs of their school or district. And so there's a lot of versatility to how they can be accessed and used, whether it's an individual or group.
I see that in the menu now. So NSTA, then professional learning, or under professional learning for districts. I think that's what you're referring to, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I'm glad you brought that point up, because I think there's been a couple changes in, I guess, professional development since I came on board as a teacher. And I can speak to Wisconsin, but I know
it's on computers now, Brian.
Other states have gone through this, but just in the sense that when I first came on the scene as a teacher, we had to have basically continuing education to keep our license in order to, keep teaching. And we had a lot of, I guess, choice, and we had a lot of independence in choosing what we thought was important to continue our professional development. And many of our listeners, I know, just like myself, we chose science classes, and it wasn't just to fulfill a license requirement, but as long as we have to do that, let's do something that feeds back into my classroom. Yeah. And then there has been a shift to, I guess, become more generic in some of that professional development. Some of that has been hoisted onto school districts that may or may not be, I guess, equipped to deliver that kind of professional development, or maybe there's limitations of what they can do only within the boundaries of their district. And it's important to reach out and build community with other people from around the world, but definitely around the nation, and maybe bring that back to science in a sense.
Absolutely. The meaning beyond the words has, in that PLU, it has a science lens to it, but the strategies in it cut across content areas, and the same is true for many of these PLUs. And I think that that's easier to do sometimes too when you have something bite-sized. That there's one about using a classroom tool that I love to refer as the Who is the Knower, but it's about the features of classroom culture that support all kids, and how to surface and really honor the thinking of all of the kids in the room with their diverse assets that they bring. And some of them are shy and introverted, and some of them are extroverted and all. And there's a simple tool that is used in this web seminar, and the whole web seminar was about the tool. And we turned that into a PLU that's about student ideas, but the sharing of student ideas cuts across. It's not just a science thing, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
And that's really appealing to elementary teachers that they've shared with us, because they have to be the experts in all the areas. And so when you can focus in on those strategies that cut across, that's something they can really leverage in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, Trish, we thank you for joining us here, and I'm excited to dig into some of these PLUs and some of the other bite-sized, edibles that you're offering us here, and in terms of let me rephrase that. Term. In some of the other bite-sized learning opportunities that the NSTA is serving up here, so we're excited to see what else the future will bring.
Absolutely, and if the teachers listening out there have suggestions, please send them our way. Like, we are here. Our mission is to serve your needs, and we're really excited about the new direction, but we can't do it without your input and your guidance and what would make an impact and support all of the great work that you do. So thank you again for all of that dedication and commitment to kids.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Lab Out Loud. If you'd like to learn more about some of the things discussed in this episode or previous episodes, you can find show notes at our website, laboutloud.com. If you have a guest idea or a future topic that you'd like to see on Lab Out Loud, go to our contact page and send us a message. Also, you can subscribe to Lab Out Loud on your favorite podcasting app, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you like to find podcasts. While you're there, leave us a review and rating. Your input helps others find our show. Thanks again for listening.